Katja Strunz is an international artist who lives and works in Berlin. Her work revolves around the intertwining of time, space, and movement. Memory and trauma play a central role, as well as the idea of pausing to perceive oneself, physically and psychologically. Her work has been featured in solo exhibitions at venues such as the Berlinische Gallery in Berlin, Camden Art Centre in London, the Museum Haus Esters in Krefeld. She participated in the 30th Sao Paulo Biennial, the 55th Carnegie International in Pittsburgh, and numerous group exhibitions throughout the world.
Hello and welcome back to the Collective Trauma Summit 2022. My name is Thomas Hübel. I'm the convener of the summit. And I have the great pleasure and honor to sit here with Berlin-based artist Katja Strunz. So Katja, welcome to our summit.
Thank you. Welcome.
So Katja and I, we know each other already for some years now. We got to know each other in Berlin some years ago. And since then we had some deep conversations and like lovely dinners to deepen the perspective on trauma, art, time, space, all kinds of philosophical realms. So Katja, I'm really happy to sit here with you today and that we can deepen our conversation, which I think has a lot of interesting dimensions. And but I want to start, before we dive into what we are both excited about, I want to ask you, I mean, you work for many years as an artist and you constantly draw upon your own creativity to develop more and new art. But there was for sure, or how was there an event or a part of your life where it became clearer to you that art is what you're really passionate about? Because if you do it for so many years, something in you must be really passionate. And so when did that passion start? What kicked your path off as an artist? Maybe you can speak a bit to that, and then we can dive into some more specific aspects.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas, for the invite. To answer your question, I think I have to go back because, as you mentioned, it's really a long way and it's an ongoing unfolding process. And I think to completely answer and to make understandable why my subject of my work, I maybe have to explain a little bit where I grew up or how I grew up and why I felt actually why I kind of then discovered that I want to do art, because it was also something that I discovered step by step. So I'm born in Germany in a very industrial area in Saarland. And so it was a very quite vital industrial area where the production facilities were visible for everyone. The steel companies and the mining, and also the shadows of this production. You know, the black smoke that showed up in the front houses as a black color of the houses in the village that I lived. And but this was kind of where I grew up, and I was very happy in this environment. And then I moved to a completely different area near Würzburg, Bad Mergentheim, and there it was completely different landscape, and it was a lot about history and culture. So I kind of felt this presence of a past, you know. It was also the time when I went then into school, and I discovered that I didn't find any relation to this environment, or I was questioning this. One picture of Würzburg has the same architectural view, so that's how it looked after the Second World War. And I was really irritated as a kid when I discovered that all the buildings are kind of reconstructions and that are not original old. So these cultural pearls I was living in, like castle of Balthasar Neumann or very important architecture, was kind of reconstruction of the past. and it felt a little bit like a false facade, or the space was kind of not homogeneous, you know. And I thought to honor this, or to kind of get a relation to the space, I have to know a little bit more about the past. And so that's why I studied first philosophy, history, and art history. And but after a while, I also understood that it's not the aim where I want to go, but that it's more about to get a relation to the presence, or to the time where I live in. And actually, that was then the decision to make art, because I thought this is the only way to get in a relation with the space, and with my own doing, and with myself.
So you said one sentence that I find interesting. You said that basically by examining and researching and learning more about the past that leads up to this point in time, you learn something about the present moment. That's an interesting sentence. So like by examining the past, it gave you more insight about the present moment, the current moment in time that we are living in right now. So that was one motivation why you studied history and the history of art.
Yeah, I think I already felt this, that I'm not living kind of in my time, or I was kind of confused, because also in school, you know, you learn about, you have a knowledge, and this is built on a past. I was singing in a chorus, and I was kind of, it was a repetition of things that happened in the past. So it was kind of maybe also a loss of that I felt embodied kind of in my time, you know. And first, I thought I have to know a little bit like more historical facts, but then I understood that it leads me not in my time, that I kind of have to do something also to feel the resistance of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And this was actually then the starting point where I jumped or dived in something uncertain also for me. Mm-hmm. And with this kind of just question or hope to get somewhere, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, because that's an interesting point also for you as an artist, to move from learning more about the past to orient yourself more in the present, and then recognizing that actually, like this, you stay in the past and you don't learn more about the present moment. So it needed a different movement, or it needed a different decision, which obviously seems to be a jump into the creative process, but the creative process contains uncertainty. So you needed to risk the uncertain. That was kind of a shifting gears.
Yeah, I think because actually this is also the feeling that I had to the past, that it's something uncertain, you know. It's and it's so maybe I wanted to experience this, or I just had I knew that I want to make just a process, and that I kind of had this intuition that it will lead me to somewhere, but I opened kind of this process for myself by allowing me to study art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting movement. Maybe later we can come back when we speak a little bit about time and time space, because I think something that you shared now, like how much can we learn about life from the past, and how do we actually participate in the present or creative moment. So this is a very interesting conversation. But before we go there, I wanted to say, because when you saw Würzburg, and you said you showed us first the perspective of the reconstructed city, and then you showed us the perspective of a basically traumatized city, like how it looked like after the Second World War. So my question is, when you realized that the city was actually bombed and massively broken, can you describe a little bit what's the impact that had on you, this kind of realization that what you see is actually a reconstruction of a traumatized landscape?
Well, I know that I had a wish to something more homogeneous, you know, and maybe something more aesthetic also. So because you see all this lacks, and that it's not a oneness anymore, you know, and you see kind of this this herded city, or you kind of just feel it. And for me, it was like, maybe that was also the reason why I could not build up a relation, but it was really more, I think I was really from this architecture that surrounded me. I could not relate on it because I saw all this lags into the, into the original side.
Mm-hmm.
And which I just didn't like, because then you have maybe some houses that fit not with the next house, and it's just not homogeneous. And maybe there was also the wish for oneness or wholeness of space, which is very abstract in a way. But I know that I also searched it in a classical music, or I was just searching for something to experience like that,
Mm-hmm. And maybe you can expand a little bit now for everybody who's listening. You can expand a little bit. So from the moment you jumped into the uncertainty of the creative process, what are the themes, or maybe you can share a little bit about the art that excites you, and what are the themes and how do you approach it, and what is actually the creative process?
For me, my work started with these letterpress prints. So I was taking books because space and history are kind of stored in books, and they're available everywhere. And I was in south of France, and I forgot to take a photo apparatus with me. So I thought, okay, well, I don't have to travel there again. I can just open a book, and I made this letterpress print, which is just very simple. I just printed continent, which is kind of more like a repetition of what I'm seeing or what there is. But this was kind of just like a first glimpse or step into my work and to question my relation to space, So this was one of the next letterpress print, summer habitation, and maybe there are a lot of themes already, which are kind of this space-time distance and the wish for kind of habitation, to be like experience the space as a home. So this is just that's just about it. It's not more. But for me, it was kind of a step into my work. Yeah, and then I discovered that the space is also temporal. So space has also a temporal aspect, and I was starting with this time-space letterpress prints, and I just and the horizontal and vertical, which is maybe a direction how I kind of I am into space, and these two directions, like the vertical is and the horizontal actually is kind of a language that I've followed up later, and you will see it later in my work. But that was the early beginning with a kind of intuition to develop this abstract language. Yeah, and here the future of the past. Today is not yesterday, so I was kind of questioning how to get into my time. And yesterday's papers was just the title of it. So after this letterpress prints, I started cutting books, and I started with collage. And this is a series of collage with the title "Then Whose Garden Was This?" So I was kind of questioning also the space, and I was cutting books, and so out of these fragments, splinters, and shattered forms, so left picture is just you see the process, and the right is then the result. So kind of the result falls on a paper, which is kind of the result of something of the past. And so here the folded structure shows up, and these are actually the two abstract dynamics that I've developed. It's the falling and the folding. It's a falling into space and a falling, and that's what I mentioned with these two vertical and horizontal directions. And from these dynamics, actually, I express or I construct my works.
So falling and folding, you say?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you get a kind of insight how I also develop my three-dimensional sculptures and from the starting point of collage. So I understand these splinters on the wall like something that has an energy coming from somewhere else. And they kind of fall into the space and unfold in the space. And the title of the work is Zeitraum, and I actually was questioning the presence of the past into the space. So some people say, yeah, my works, they look like bats or moths, and it has something with these. It could get more and more and more, and then taking the space, which is a container, but then it's full. So here you see that was the paperwork, Zeitraum. And this is an invention from Walter Benjamin. He added the second T. It's hard to explain in English, but it's then not time space. And the word dream comes into the space, and the word Trauma to this double T. And so actually this was kind of the first time when I came up with the word trauma and understood that it has something to do with this aspect of that things do not end, and they kind of repeat into the present space. The next, because then you see I made a lot of works like that with the same title, and it's always kind of these splinters that fall to the space and that create this dynamic as if they could kind of move and get more or less, but they kind of fill the container or the space. I put here the window on the right side to show this pressure, how they kind of there's a kind of pressure behind because it's kind of damaged the window.
When you talk about the splinters or these fragments that are falling into the space, when we look, for example, at trauma, we see that there are fragmentations happening in the inner world, so that we experience certain parts of ourselves as separate or as not connected or as numb or as whatever other. And when I see your work, because in my understanding of trauma, we could also say, yeah, all these fragmented parts are actually frozen in time space, and that's what makes them into separate splinters or separate fragments. And only the release from that kind of prison in time space, this shutdown place, it releases what seems like a fragment into the wholeness of a human being, into the wholeness of a culture, into the wholeness of the planet. And so when I look at your work, maybe you can expand a bit if there is any similarity to what I said when we look at the trauma work. So that's kind of more seen from the inner experience of a traumatized nervous system. But it reminds me a bit when I see your work, like how the fragments are coming into space, and the fact that they are fragments also means that they are separate. And the space is kind of a place that hosts them. And maybe you can speak a little bit to that or what comes up in you when you hear me say what I say.
I can understand what you say, that kind of when you see the work, you kind of see also the wholeness behind, or that there was something. I mean, it's because these are kind of parts. It's a kind of fragmentation of something. I mean, for me, it hasn't existed before. It's I created as if there would be a wholeness behind that would have been kind of fallen apart, and it's about this. In German, when you say fall, you have this also in language. So things separate also in language. It's several cases, and I think that's all how our thinking also is working. That we kind of put something in cases and bring this then together. And so this word "fall" in the German language has a huge meaning in several layers. And through this kind of fall out into the space, you can feel the intuition that it would have been one before. But I don't have to show it or to explain it. But it's something that kind of moves in your head, or even you can kind of imagine that it gets more, or it's kind of more expanding. Actually, this is a lot also about contraction and expansion, the folding, which is the second dynamic next to the falling. For me, the falling is the vertical, and the folding is a more horizontal, which is about contraction and expansion. And I maybe you can see it also in this folded forms, which are actually frozen. What is another aspect you mentioned before? Yeah.
Right, the frozen. And maybe you can speak a little bit to the enfolding, like enfolding, because like also in consciousness development, but also maybe in the trauma work, we like that enfolding and unfolding. Maybe you can speak a little bit how you in your artistic work relate to contraction, expansion, and enfolding. Something gets enfolded and something gets unfolded. I think that's interesting to hear from you more about.
Yeah, it's I remember that in the early times when I started this work, so people also sometimes ask me if they're kind of enfolding or unfolding, and actually I said I don't know. It's just like a frozen state. But now later I discovered that it's kind of like a question of how I relate to it. You know, this is a new work where I kind of try to find a form where you can see that it's kind of a decision that you can go in both directions. You can enfold it or you can unfold it. So you feel that it's kind of like a transformational process in between expansion and contraction.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Also, you can feel that it's a decision, and it's like also in the inner architecture of, for example, the formation of a defense mechanism in the psyche or in the body or in the nervous system, that there is a process of contracting and then there's a process of expanding. It's like the same. It's like enfolding, unfolding, that there is a power that can move in both directions. And often when we re-own that power in the healing process, we also, like, we can change the course of the decision. So something that was very contracted and frozen can melt and unfold again and get integrated. And so that's very interesting how you speak about that there is a decision, and it depends on the decision that it contracts or it expands. And is there anything else that you relate enfolding and unfolding with space-time?
Yeah, because I was looking. I mean, I can show also the pictures of the whole exhibition. It was an exhibition that I made in Berlin, in the Berlinische Galerie, a huge space, and the title of the show was, I say it first in German, it's Drehmoment, viel Zeit, wenig Raum. And it was actually about this aspect that we kind of try to win time or gain time, and then we hurry through the space, actually by taking cars or going by train. And then we kind of we have kind of like an embodied feeling to the space, because we are on the plane and we're traveling with the plane and we don't have any relation to the distance. And so I tried to show this this aspect in this exhibition, that the time that space is kind of folding. And I made this is kind of epoxy. It's not a real balloon. It's a cast out of epoxy, so it's frozen. It cannot change its form anymore, to show like what happens when the space goes, that then the fold comes up. Because people ask me why you connect folding with time, and I say like, yeah, I mean, when I'm getting older, I get folds in my face, but you see it very clearly in this balloon, that this space-time relation. And on the other hand, you can blow up the balloon, and then you win the space. But if things kind of shrink, what happens when we kind of shrink the world because we are traveling, then things getting closer, and you can go very fast from here to there because it's shrinked. And as I experienced this all day, also in my life, it's very important for me to express and to find, to explore this and to understand and to work this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because you said something very powerful. You said that if the speed of data or the speed of travel is increasing, relatively the world is shrinking. And I think you said it by yourself, like you feel it, we all feel it, how the data speed actually shrinks the world into a global village.
Yeah.
Just that we too have the possibility to talk to each other now, and we are thousands of kilometers apart, makes the world much smaller. Without the speed of data, we wouldn't have the possibility to have this conversation right now. And I think that's very powerful also in your image. It's very powerful to see.
Yeah, so this was, I showed 3 sculptures in this exhibition. So you saw the first one, and these are the other 2. And I wanted to kind of make obvious this feeling of a shrinked space with this first sculpture. What its title is, tellurische contraction. So it's contraction of the world actually. And the sculpture behind has, maybe it remembers you a little bit on these machines that work on the street, that kind of make the streets flat so we can drive very fast on it. Like a chain kind of making the asphalt for the streets. So this was the idea behind this sculpture.
No, powerful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this belonged to the other one that looked like a bit like a scale with the space and the time. So this was the same exhibition. These 2 images here and the
balloon.
Yeah, and the balloon.
Yeah.
Right.
It was an exhibition that I made here in Berlin. You see, in 2013. It was Berlinische Galerie, so it's a huge space. And I normally work when I prepare an exhibition. I work in a model and I try a lot of things out, and then I have models in a paper size that I kind of make with my hands. And in this case, I tried exactly to repeat the paper model and bring it in reality.
And that's also epoxy?
No, this is steel. The first
steel.
sculpture is made out of aluminium, because you can bend aluminium a little bit easier than steel. It's a little bit more soft. And the sculpture in the background is made out of steel.
Wow.
And then it's powder coated or lacquered, in those cases.
And so when you work on an exhibition like that, can you speak a little bit what's your experience of how creativity unfolds through you? Like there must be a moment when, like, I don't know, an inspiration comes in, or like something inspires you to deal with something new. And then maybe you're in a phase of like it's being in a creative space where things are unclear, they're becoming clearer, less clear. I don't know, like how is your experience of the creative process from the first moment when you have an inspiration for a new exhibition, for example, until you end up in a space like that, as you showed us the photo? But because I think there are many different versions of experiencing a creative process. And so how does creativity work through you? Or how is your subjective experience of it?
It's very interesting, and I think that it's exactly what I love to experience, because it's something very it's like something uncertain. It's normally when I start with something, I repeat something that I know already or that I made before. So I'm holding on something, and sure, I'm not satisfied with it because I want to make something new, or I want to experience something that is so strong that I want to realize it or bring it really in the world. So, and it's very often that I work as a long time with things that I know and that I'm arranging them. And then sometimes I come to a point where I also start a very destructive or deconstructivist process where I invite also things happen by chance, or sometimes just because I'm getting crazy because I don't come to a result. And then I'm also starting to do things that I kind of letting things happen from outside, and I have to be very pay a lot of attention on what's happening. I'm kind of like looking at it, what is happening, and then I when I see something which is fascinating, then I know exactly, okay, that's it now. There I go now, and this is the way or the path that I follow. But it's very often is then a point also to let go and to be very, very awakened to see what's happening actually. And then I can then I get a kind of a glimpse of an idea of what can unfold of something new. But I kind of have to invite also this uncertainty and let go what I know or what I've done before. And this is sometimes hard to come there because normally from this way we think or we go through life, we repeat, we are in the patterns. And it's not so usual that we kind of step out of it.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Katja, because you actually described the whole arc of a process unfoldment right now, and the two moments that I find interesting or that stick out for me when I listen to you is the moment when you feel that there is almost, it felt to me always like a little bit of an anger or an impatience that if the own conditioned thinking becomes a box.
Yeah.
And then you develop some kind of process where something new or unpredictable can happen. But then you said something else. So the first one is also a bit the anger of the known that kind of wants to open the form that we know. And the second one is the moment when you recognize that by paying attention to the process, you actually select something that you know this is it. So it's interesting what inside of you knows this is it. The process of recognition of a new piece or a new inspiration or a new form is one thing, but the recognition to be able to pick it is also an interesting part. So there's something new emerging, and there's something that recognizes the new emerging as very certain. Because when you speak, it sounds very certain. Oh, I know this is it. This is the path to follow. Can you speak a little bit to that moment when you recognize something and if it's a feeling or how you know that that's the path to follow? Because that sounds to me very certain when you say it, even if it's uncertain.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, it's for me not so easy to talk about it because I also don't really understand what it is. But definitely, I feel it very strong that this is. Maybe it's just because it's something I haven't seen before, and I see that it's also for me a challenge to go there.
Mm-hmm.
that's just like that I feel that there's something to experience. It's a challenge that I want to, or that I'm also able to hold on or to go.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I want to highlight again, so because you say many things, I think, that are very specific to the creative process, like very crucial. You said, it's hard for me to talk about it because it's something that is so immediate that it can't be easily reflected upon, like, oh, I understand how it works, and when that happens, then I select it. And then it's not like this. It's not a predictable process, because you're in an unpredictable zone. You're in a zone that needs some uncertainty. So I think your answer actually speaks a lot to the inner state of a creative flow, that we are part of something being born. It's not something that happened already, and you know already how it's going to be. That's why you can talk about it like in a lecture. And I think your answer is very illuminating to that it's hard to talk about it. I think is very authentic to the process. That's a beautiful. I think you gave us now a beautiful, like your specific experience, but a beautiful arc of how a creative process is unfolding. If there's anything else that you experience in these moments, please add it. I don't know if that's the main thing, but for me, it's very illuminating to listen to how creativity unfolds in you.
Well, I can show another collage that was also in the very beginning of my work, which was very, very important for me. So you see, this collage is from 1997. So this was also very early, when I was still studying. And when you remember the early letterpress prints that I showed you, and these collages, when I started cutting books and old pages, it's when I'm in the process, my room sometimes is full of fragments, and I'm kind of moving the fragments, and I'm especially what I just tried, that I kind of just looking at what is happening and how things look, and then I'm kind of storing this experience, what I make and how it feels, and then I'm kind of storing this experience. And but in this case, it was like I wake up the next day, and I was looking at my floor again, and I saw suddenly this collage. So it looked already like it is. So it was just happening completely by chance. But it remembered me completely a constructivist collage. It looks like a collage from a former time. And so there was a time in the early 20th century you call constructivist, and it's very similar how collages from that time look. And I was really surprised. And as you see, it was in the early beginning. I understood that it's like the ghost, that it's kind of, so I invited kind of this ghost of constructivist to be part of my work from this. So it's also it's kind of like, it's also working with things that happen out of control, but I have to be very awake. And then then I go to the next step and say, okay, now it's an invite for the ghost who's still alive, or the undead ghost of the constructivist, to be part of my work. And actually this was kind of the founding of all my work. And now my work deals also with this construction and deconstruction, and always this resonance of the past, which is kind of built on this constructivist, traumatized idea, is still. But this was then a decision that I made from a different place,
Beautiful.
So there was this thing happening by chance, and the other thing came on the top, that I said, okay, now I invite you for being part of my work.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so interesting that you're saying that, because it reminds me very much when I'm leading large-scale collective trauma processes. it's a little bit like a similar experience. Like when I listen to different voices, they look like as if they're coming up by chance because different people say different things in a group. But then it's a bit similar to be very awake, to feel and listen which ones are much deeper archetypal voices that are not being said by intention, that it's consciously being said by that person, but what one person expresses holds a lot of collective charge. And it's a little bit the same, to be very awake, to notice that moment, and then to highlight that voice, because it has a lot of energy stored in the collective unconscious. And it's not that that person it's not that one voice is better than the other, but some voices are connected to the underground water system, to the underground water. And it's a little bit similar when I listen to your experience with the collage here, also what you said before, to select the thing that has a lot of energy, that in these moments, I also always know that this is it. This is a voice, and when I highlight that voice and I let it rest a bit, so then I make a short break in the group and I let everybody feel what's being said, then we can see what a strong effect that has. And so it's interesting that that's why I wanted to hear like how you experience the creative process, because I think that's a very, very interesting dimension to be part in. And then you also said something very powerful that I want to underline is in a way, like the ghost or the energy of the constructivist phase was with you in the process. That's also an interesting way to frame it. So that's that's very beautiful, Katja. Like it resonates a lot when I listen to you. I can it's a lot. It's very resonant how you describe process.
Yes, this, which I call memory wall, and then the next one. So this was the whole exhibition. You see, it's from 2008, but still the collage from the language leads to the exhibition. So I'm I'm also then blowing up then the things, and I'm adding the title. The title Einbruchstellen means that again things fall into the space. Actually, also as it happened with this creative process of the collage. And so, yeah, maybe this is just a view on how I then work from the 2-dimensional and the 3-dimensional.
Yeah, that's also beautiful, because in a way, I think also in the traumatized state, like our perception might be bound in 2-dimensionality. Like I see the other, like as a post, it's an other. But in the 3-dimensional embodied experience, I feel you. So you are not that distant. So you're also a 3-dimensional experience. Either I see you like a poster, or I see you like a 3-dimensional part of the space. And then the compassion, and then the relation, and then the sensing of each other is much stronger, because I feel you again through my body. And so it seems like also like the 2-dimensional and the 3-dimensional is also like a change. It adds a whole different dimension to the work.
Yeah. This is also, I have this also in this wall. Yeah, this memory wall on these black cubes on the wall. I have just 2-dimensional sheets out of metal, and then I have the 3-dimensional boxes. And that's very interesting that you say this, because I can understand also from the process of doing it that this feeling the resistance, or the 3-dimensional body, that it's something where I want to come, where I want to realize this then, what I told you also. I see that, and then I want to have it. I want to visualize it. And I feel then also during this process, this resistance of the material. So I also come myself into my body by doing this artwork. That's also why I like to work with steel, because it's a quite strong material, heavy. and gives me a resistance.
Yeah, that's also powerful that the material itself like confronts you with the resistance to be formed, and that also brings you deeper into your own embodiment. That's also a very powerful sentence. And I think it's also to feel in the memory wall here that like how the 2-dimensional spaces and the 3-dimensional spaces feel differently, and how strong it is when you feel them together. Because sometimes we are either in one state or in the other state, but when we feel it together, we get really the difference, and that's very strong. So that's really beautiful, Katja. And first of all, I love your work. I think it's it always excites me to see your work and the unfolding, enfolding, compression, expansion. These are all very powerful forces that live in us, and I think you have a great way to make these forces visible for us, because often they seem like abstract philosophy, but for me, time, space, or compression, expansion, that's not just philosophy, that's really happening moment to moment in life. And I think your work has a strong power to make that visible, to make that tangible, and to give us a reflection of these forces that sometimes seem to be invisible. So that's really beautiful. So I think we are at the end of the time. I don't want to stretch your time too much. So thank you, Katja. This was a lovely ride, and I think it gave us a great overview also over your own, evolution in your work. I think we can see the development in your own being throughout the years that you showed us now. Is there anything at the end that you want to add or that's missing for you?
No, I want to thank you, Thomas, because I learn also a lot from you, and because you came also in, we were very close neighbors suddenly, also in Berlin, and I learned also a lot of kind of through your words. I also get into the understanding of what is happening in my work. So thank you a lot for this.
Yeah, thank you, Katja. It was a very exciting hour for me. I really enjoyed our time here and how we are diving into these spaces. So that's beautiful. Thank you very much. It's a big enrichment to the summit. And I think the description of the creative process was amazing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.
Learn more about Katja Strunz and her work on her website, katjastrunz.com.